FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
And welcome. You're listening to the Financial Survival Network. It's Kerry, Lutz, and Ben Bernanke says it's okay, so you better stop eating Chinese food now. Yes, he's predicting a soft landing for China, just like I seem to remember he said that overall the U.S. economy was okay, subprime mortgages, the fallout would be limited, and he was right about that. Correct, John Rubinio?
Hey, Kerry. Yeah, with Ben Bernanke's record of insight into what's going on in the U.S. and the global economy, we should relax now about China, because all of us who were worried about China having taken on too much debt and maybe blundering into a credit crisis can stop worrying, because Ben Bernanke just did an interview in which he said there's no chance of a Chinese hard landing. So that's off the table, at least.
Well, I was relieved.
But for anybody who would like to dig into it a little bit, Zero Hedge just did a really interesting, in-depth look at Chinese debt accumulation of the last 10 or so years. And it turns out that basically the Chinese economic miracle is derived from them taking on tens of trillions of new dollars of debt in just the last decade. And so basically their banking system now has more debt within it than the U.S. banking system does, even though the U.S. is a much bigger economy than China still. And so a lot of that debt that China took on went to what an economist would call malinvestment. In other words, things that maybe that local authority probably shouldn't have built, but they had the ability to borrow the money, so they did anyhow. And so now you got all these ghost cities and ghost airports and roads with no cars on it and everything in China. And those things aren't generating the kind of cash flow that you need to pay back the debt that was taken on. And so that's the source of the anxiety about the Chinese economy right now. And the numbers are really chilling. I mean, they owe immense amounts of money and aren't generating anything like the cash flow that they need from a lot of these projects to cover the debt. So for Ben Bernanke or anyone to say, oh, China's fine, there's no chance of a hard landing, kind of implies that that's a situation that can be understood, but that's not the case, because first of all, this is more debt than any developing country has ever taken on. And second of all, a lot of China's institutions are relatively new. You know, this is a relatively new capitalist country. And so it's never been tested by a major financial crisis. So we have no idea how the different authorities out there who have jurisdiction over one aspect of China's debt or another are going to behave, because we've never seen them in action before. And all we know is that they've got immense amounts of debt to deal with and no clear way to do it at this point. So I think there's a lot to worry about with China, and we'll see in the next couple of years how it all plays out. But right now, there's an awful lot of projects out there that are cash flow negative, and awful lot of entities that are therefore insolvent or on the verge of being insolvent. And it hasn't been worked out yet, other than the federal government in China starting to inch its way towards a Western-style QE program. And if they do that, then who knows? You know, we just don't know how this is going to play out. But we can't say with certainty that worst-case scenarios are impossible in this case.
Well, I can tell you how it's going to play out. You heard about that North Korean defense minister. He had the nerve to fall asleep during dear leader's speech. Remember what happened to him?
That's a really good management technique they've got there. Keep you on your toes.
Yeah, well, it kept him on his toes. Execution by anti-aircraft fire. That's a uniquely North Korean means of accountability, isn't it?
Well, you know, having that kind of absolute power would be fun, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
You know, you can kill people in all kinds of really creative ways and totally get away with it. So I think a lot of people around the world, a lot of sociopaths around the world, are looking at North Korea and wishing they were in charge, because that would be fun. You know?
Yeah. What's wrong with that? Huh? What did they say? Monty Python? Absolute power is nice.
Yeah, because you can kill people in any kind of way that you can think of. You know?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, what's wrong with that, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
God, this is an insane world, but the Chinese are not much better. They've been known to have a trial, or what passes for a trial in China, take the guy out to a field 15 minutes later, one to the head behind the ear, and justice has been served. And going to be a lot of justice taking place in China when their economy really collapses, and it's going to collapse. I don't care how good their growth rate appears to be. I don't want to know about any of it. I don't care how much gold they've got, whether they got 5 times more gold than what supposedly is in Fort Knox. Who knows how much there is in Fort Knox? Doesn't matter. When it collapses, when there is no demand for the products in an export-driven economy because all of your customers have gone bankrupt, and your main customers are the United States and the European Union. Okay, yeah, the Asian economies and Africa are all buying your stuff, but their customers are the United States and the European Union. It's all connected, and everybody stops buying, and the Chinese get scared because all of a sudden their stock market collapses. This is not going to have a happy ending, John, and their necessity, their culture requires them to blame somebody, and they're going to blame somebody, and there's going to be a lot of heads rolling off of a shelf, literally, and that's what's going to happen. All right.
Well, I think you could make the case that that's one aspect of Chinese culture that's superior to that of the West. That they're going to treat their bankers and their bureaucrats who caused the mess the way they should be treated, right? And
and I guess they are.
yeah. And compared to us, where not a single Wall Streeter has still not gone to jail. We aren't putting anybody in jail, even though the banks here in the U.S. and some of the European banks are pleading guilty to felonies.
Yeah.
But the people within the banks who committed the crimes aren't even being named, let alone indicted and imprisoned. So this whole corporations are people thing doesn't seem to apply to the big banks. They can commit felonies, be convicted of felonies, and not suffer any of the penalties that usually go with being a convicted felon, right?
It's all fair.
Yeah. So the Chinese model would be a lot more attractive in this kind of a circumstance, and even the Icelandic model, where they just put their bankers in jail. They didn't behead them or anything, but at least they punish them in some tangible way. So who knows?
I'd love to find the Chinese equivalent of Jamie Dimon. 10 years, where are they now? Jamie Dimon's in Monte Carlo. He's living the life, and then they have a grave marker, a poorly constructed grave marker for Xingzhou Diamond in Beijing, or Shanghai, and fairness, right? It's just not fair.
It isn't fair. And, we still have a chance of dealing with our banks the way they should be dealt with. But I think it would take the election of Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren for it to happen. And that's not likely at the moment.
There's a great article today about Lizzie Warren. Okay. Lizzie Warren in the 90s, she was flipping foreclosures in Oklahoma. Okay. She's a total freaking hypocrite. The banksters elected her. She's a liar. All right. You just can't trust the gal who, she is what she is. And don't be fooled by Lizzie Warren's rhetoric. She's a fraud.
Well, you never want to fall in love with any politician because they will break your heart.
Yeah.
But it's, leaving aside what else they've done in their lives, the people who are willing to stand up to the banks today are at least fun to listen to. And I agree with you that if we're talking lifetime of consistency, then you got to go with Ron Paul first and foremost. And then Bernie Sanders, who's wrong about a lot of other stuff, has at least been consistently opposed to a lot of the Wall Street stuff that you and I hate, Kerry. So he's also fun to listen to.
I'll grant you that. I totally agree with you there. At least they get A's for consistency. if not authenticity, right? So
Yeah,
you
yeah.
got to grant them
You can
something.
disagree with a lot of other positions that a politician takes, but if they're opposed to the big banks right now and they're pointing out the inconsistencies and the basic logical fallacy of a lot of our financial system, you have to like them at least for that. So
Okay.
they deserve some
Agreed.
credit for
We agree.
telling the truth when the entire mainstream political culture in the U.S. is silent on the crimes committed by these big banks.
We agree on that. We agree wholeheartedly. No question about it. This is totally true. We're on the same page there. No question. But that doesn't mean that you're going to eat whatever they're spoon feeding you, because you know that it's come from a foul place that you just don't want to consume. Let's just leave it at that, John. But hey, we've got more here when we come back on the Financial Survival Network, the place to go for the real news.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Every week the show is growing. Would you like to be a part of it? Then go to clubfsn.com and help support us with $1, $2, $5, or $10 a month and get a host of premium content with newsletters dropped into your mailbox, free books, private audio clips, webinars, and much more. Then join clubfsn.com. If you want to get ahead of the trend and ensure your family's financial security before it's too late, go to clubfsn.com and sign up.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
In case you just joined us, we're talking with John Rubinio of dollarcollapse.com, co-author of The Money Bubble, which was recently featured in zerohedge.com as one of the anti-Federal Reserve books. You should have been pleased with that. I hope you caught that, John.
Kerry, I did not catch that. Thanks for letting me know. I'll check it out.
Yeah, yesterday's Zero Hedge, all of the leading monetary books except one are anti-Federal Reserve. Who would have thunk? I was shocked, I'll tell you that. Not really, but any thinking person, if you really understand the way that money is created, you've got to understand that the Federal Reserve is the enemy of the working man. But John, we got to go to this Greece thing, because Greece is rapidly losing its sovereignty. It's not going to be a country. As you pointed out, it's going to become a brand. And I guess maybe they'll get a cut of T-shirt sales, Parthenon plates, and Minoan rune kind of excavations. But it's rapidly losing its standing as a country in the world, according to your article.
Well, the backstory to this is that originally, when Greece went functionally bankrupt a few years ago, the solution that was imposed on it by the big European creditors was to divest and privatize a lot of state-owned assets and basically have an auction in which foreign countries and foreign companies could come in and buy up Greek ports and airports and roads, and the Greek voters responded to that by kicking out the government that agreed to it and by installing socialists who promised not to go ahead with all the privatizations. Well, it turns out that the privatizations are going ahead after all in a lot of cases. And so that raises the question that I posed in this article, which is, at what point, when foreigners are coming in and buying up assets in a country, does that country stop being a country because outsiders own so many of its assets? And Greece is kind of the test case for this process, because basically the developed world has spent the last 20 or 30 years going around to the developing world and tricking them one way or another into borrowing lots of money, which they can never pay back, and then looting these countries after they default one way or another. And Greece is the latest in that process. So Greece gets to be the test case for establishing the line at which, once you cross it in terms of foreign ownership, you're not even a country anymore, really, because you are so completely owned by German companies and the Chinese government and U.S. multinationals. Yeah. And so do you just become, a brand for these guys rather than a sovereign nation? And the process, interestingly enough, is at work on a different scale in the U.S. with middle-class families and working-class families being tricked into taking on student loans and car loans and credit card debt, and becoming more or less insolvent because of that, and then becoming, a debt serf to the big banks forever after. When you've got student loans and a car loan and massive credit card debt and a mortgage, you're paying interest to the big banks forever. There's no way out of it, especially when the job you used to have has been shipped overseas by the company that you used to work for, and now you're reduced to one of those part-time jobs with no benefits. That is what we're adding at the expense of full-time jobs now, month after month. You're basically a serf, debt slave, and so it's interesting that the process is happening on these different scales. You see a whole country being looted in this way, at the same time that families and individuals are being sucked into the same vortex. And so where it ends, who knows? Take it to its logical conclusion, and you end up with a handful of very rich, very powerful multinationals and money center banks and a few developed world governments who basically control everybody else in the world. And, we're not far from that now, obviously, but that we're not all the way to the logical conclusion of the process yet either. So it's just interesting and disturbing to watch it happen. And, as I said, Greece is a great test case to see exactly how far it can be taken.
Well, my question is this. Now that they're no longer a country, does that mean that they stop fighting with Turkey? Or, you know what this reminds me of? God, this is amazing. Talk about life imitating art or art imitating life. There was once a movie with Eddie Arnold and Judge Reinhold. I'm going to have to look this up now on IMDb. That's the place to go when you need to find a movie. And basically, the way decisions get made by Eddie Arnold, he's running a company that looks alarmingly like ITT. And there's this humongous wooden table. I mean, it stretches for like 3 blocks. And Eddie Albert needs somebody to go to a town to tell them that their steel mill is going to be shut down, and he takes a set of ball bearings, and he just sends it rolling down the table, and everybody is like dying that the ball bearings are going to roll off into their lap. That's the way he makes the decision of who to pick. And the ball bearings are rolling and rolling and rolling down the table, and they go about 2 blocks, and they fall into Judge Reinhold's lap. And he's the one that has to go break the bad news to the town that your steel mill is getting shut down. And he goes to the town, and he's immediately bombarded by the press. And he said, you're here to shut down the town and knock out, thousands of jobs. Why are you doing this, you evil person? And he just says outright, the company can't make money. And they're like, the media's a gasp at it. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, the company can't make money. That's why they're shutting down the steel mill. And all of a sudden he becomes like this truth teller, and he becomes like an immediate celebrity across the world. Finally, somebody that tells the truth, and it becomes this hysterical thing. But then this company they want to remove the head of what a country. It's basically Chile, because they want to seize their copper mine. So they're having a meeting in their headquarters, and they're having a coup d'etat in the headquarters, literally with guns blazing. I mean, it gets a little absurd, but that's what these companies are turning into. Like, the countries are subsumed into the companies, into the multinationals. That's what's really happening here. So, I mean, the movie wasn't a great movie. It only got a 5.4 rating, but if you can, check it out. Head Office. It was done in 1985. Judge Reinhold, Eddie Albert, Lori Nan Engler. It just is like, that's what the world's turning into, this corporatocracy. Also, Rollerball, another movie that kind of turns into this corporatocracy that we're all living through now. John, where really the what you're describing with Greece is what it's turning into. The countries are subservient to the corporations. In fact, to the point where they become brands that are marketed by corporations. A little long-winded, but I think you get the point.
Yeah, that seems to be the process right now, and but also with the active cooperation of the governments of the stronger countries in the world, the U.S. and Germany, and to a lesser extent China and maybe Japan and Russia are benefiting from this process because they've got the big multinationals that can come in and buy up a lot of these assets that are on the block right now. So yeah, it really does look like a partnership between big corrupt governments and extremely powerful multinationals to loot the rest of the global economy. So that's kind of Catherine Austin Fitz's breakaway culture. It sounds like the 1/10 of 1% that has the best technology, all the financial power that it needs, and the will to push its advantage to its logical conclusion.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it really is coming true. Yeah. Yep, yeah, it really is.
Yeah, and the Greece thing seems like it's coming to a head here pretty soon. They're talking deal today and making noises like they're going to come up with some kind of a compromise and then agree to it. And that it's not going to be workable, whatever they do. But and it's going to be very unfavorable for Greece. Yep. But it doesn't look like there's a solution for the Greek government other than to capitulate at some point, because the alternative, although, in the long run, leaving the Eurozone and going back to the drachma would probably be the best thing for Greece. There's a financial crisis along the way if they try that. And so they're terrified of all the money being sucked out of their banks and having to impose capital controls and going into a depression for 2 years while all that plays out. And so they'll probably agree to something that suits the IMF, which almost by definition can't suit the average Greek. So it's going to be brutal and depressing, I think, as we see this play out.
Hey, absolutely. Because look, going back to the drachma, at least initially, all their credit's going to be cut off. Creditors will seize assets. Because there will be millions of creditors of the Greek government. That. It's just going to hit the fan. And hey, we've never seen a huge modern government like Greece. Modern, I put in quotes because it's not modern. It's draconian. It's Byzantine. And that's a bit of a pun, if you will. I didn't mean to come up with that. But hey, I'm going to put a link in the show notes to Head Office, the movie Boardroom scene, because you're going to want to see that for sure. It's so cool. I laugh at it every time I think of it. And who would think that it would be in a YouTube? But there it is, and you got to love it. But it's just so true. Anyway, John, time has run out, and we gotta run. But look. Keep writing, and we will be back next week to discuss the latest disaster du jour, of which no doubt there will be plenty, right?
Yeah, we always seem to have a lot to talk about, Kerry, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
No shortage, that's for sure. And hey, go over to dollarcollapse.com. John's writing is unique in this day and age. John is a gifted writer. You're not going to just read all of his work in just one screen. You actually have to spend some time and absorb it and think about it and analyze it. That's unique, John, in this day and age. It's not like a Huffington Post puff piece where, it's in half a screen, so I'm informed. No, you have to think about John's writing. John's a real writer. Hey, unique in this day and age. And, sign up for his newsletter, sign up for our newsletter, go over to financialsurvivalnetwork.com, sign up for the newsletter, and check out Stefan's postings for the day. It's well worth your time. There's stuff there that you're just not going to find elsewhere. You want to stay informed, place to go, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. John, we will talk to you next week. Be well, my friend.
Thanks, Kerry. Take care.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.